My name is Charlotte and I have a secret that no one in the world knows, not even my husband, not even my closest friends. It is a story that began with desperation, and ended with guilt, money, and a heart full of confusion. I used to live in Malabo, the capital city of Equatorial Guinea. My husband Samuel and I had been married for 7 years. He was a kind man, honest, simple, and hard-working, but unlucky in life. He had a small business, a construction company that was doing fine for a while. Then one year, the government stopped paying for a big project, and everything went wrong. He took a huge bank loan to keep the business alive. Month after month, the pressure grew heavier. The bank kept calling, and the debt kept growing. Samuel stopped sleeping well. He began to lose weight, and his smile disappeared. I could see fear in his eyes every time he opened another letter from the bank. I loved him, but I was afraid too. I knew that if we couldn't pay back that loan, we would lose everything: our home, our car, our peace. That was when Balthasar Ngonga entered my life. Meeting Balthasar was not just any man. He was powerful, the leader of the National Financial Investigation Agency. People whispered his name with respect and fear. He was tall, elegant, with a deep voice that sounded like it carried secrets. He was known for his intelligence, but also for being cold and mysterious. I met him at a government dinner one evening. My cousin worked in a ministry and had invited me to come with her. I didn't even want to go at first, but I needed a distraction. When I walked into that bright hall, full of important people in suits and dresses, I felt small. But then I noticed Balthasar. He stood alone, holding a glass of wine, his eyes scanning the room slowly. When his gaze met mine, I froze. He smiled, just a small, knowing smile, and raised his glass slightly. Later, he came to me. "You don't seem like you belong to this crowd," he said softly. I laughed nervously. "Maybe I don't, then we have something in common," he said. We talked for hours that night. He was charming, sharp, and strangely kind. When he spoke, he made me feel seen, important. For the first time in months, I forgot my worries. A week later, he invited me for coffee. I told myself it was just a friendly meeting. But when I sat across from him in a quiet cafe, he looked directly into my eyes and said, "You look troubled, Charlotte. Tell me what's wrong." I don't know why I told him everything about Samuel, the debt, the fear of losing everything. He listened carefully, never interrupting. Then, he said something that made my heart stop. "I can help you," he said. "How?" He smiled slightly. "Let's just say, I have influence in certain places. And I have more money than I can ever spend." I stared at him. "Why would you help me?" He leaned closer. "Because I like you." That was the beginning. At first, I refused. I told myself I was a good wife, that I couldn't do something so wrong. But the fear of losing everything grew stronger each day. The calls from the bank never stopped. Samuel became more desperate. One night, after another argument with my husband, I called Balthasar. He came to pick me up in a black car with tinted windows. We drove through the quiet streets until we reached a beautiful villa by the sea. He led me inside. Soft lights, music, the smell of expensive perfume. I remember my hands shaking. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw both danger and comfort. "You don't have to do this," he said softly. But I whispered, "I want to." That night, everything changed. He was gentle but powerful, confident but caring. When he held me, I forgot about my problems, my husband, my guilt. For a few hours, I felt safe, even loved. After that night, Balthasar began sending money. Sometimes in envelopes, sometimes through quiet transactions. I never asked where it came from. I used it to pay the bank, to fix the house, to save my husband's business. Samuel thought a miracle had happened. He cried with happiness, hugged me, thanked God for saving us. Every time he did, I felt a knife twist inside my chest. Balthasar and I continued to meet, always in secret, always at night. He never asked for promises. He just wanted my company, my attention. And I gave it, though every time I returned home, I felt like a stranger to myself sometimes. Lying beside Samuel as he slept peacefully, I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "I'm sorry, but I couldn't stop." One night, Balthasar told me he was being transferred abroad for work. "This will be our last night together," he said quietly. I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. He gave me one last gift, a bank card with a large amount of money. "For your future," he said. I cried when he kissed me goodbye. Then he was gone just like that. Samuel never found out the truth. The debts were gone, our life slowly returned to normal. But I was never the same. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had traded love for survival. I remember it was a warm Friday evening in Malabo. The government building where the dinner was held looked bright and elegant, with golden lights shining on the walls. I had spent hours choosing my dress, a soft blue one that I had bought long ago but never worn. My cousin, who worked at the Ministry of Finance, kept saying, "Charlotte, come on, you need to relax and smile tonight." But my heart was heavy. I was tired of pretending that everything was fine at home. Samuel had stopped talking much, and I was living each day like a shadow beside him. The debt, the fear, the constant calls from the bank, it was eating us alive. When I entered the big hall that night, everything felt different. People were laughing, drinking, and talking about money, power, and politics, things I didn't understand. I felt out of place. I stood near a tall window, holding a glass of juice, trying not to look lost. Then I saw him, Balthasar Ingonga. He stood near the center of the room, dressed in a black suit that fit him perfectly. His presence was strong, calm, confident, but also quiet, like a man who didn't need to prove anything. He wasn't smiling, but his eyes were sharp and observant, watching everyone as if he could see straight into their hearts. For a moment, our eyes met. I quickly looked away, embarrassed. But when I looked again, he was still watching me, a small smile touching his lips. Later, while people were busy clapping for a speech, I suddenly felt someone standing beside me. I turned, and it was him. "You don't seem to like parties," he said in a soft voice. I laughed nervously. "Not really. Too many important people." He nodded slightly. "Important people are often the most boring." I smiled. His words made me feel comfortable. He spoke simply, not like the others who use big words to sound smart. We talked for a long time about music, about the city, about life. I told him I lived near the coast and loved the sound of the waves at night. He said, "Then you love peace." That's rare. When the dinner ended, he walked me outside. The night air was cool and gentle. I said goodbye, but before leaving, he said, "Charlotte, I would like to see you again." I didn't answer. I just smiled and walked away. But inside, my heart was beating fast, faster than it had in months. A few days later, he called me. I didn't know how he got my number, but hearing his voice made me weak. He asked if we could meet for coffee. I said yes, telling myself it was just a friendly talk. We met at a quiet cafe near the sea. Balthasar looked different that day, relaxed, not like the powerful man everyone feared. He listened when I spoke, really listened, and when I told him about Samuel's business and our problems, he didn't judge me. He just said, "You deserve a break from all this pain." When I looked into his eyes, I saw something I hadn't felt in a long time: care. Real, warm care. After coffee, we walked along the beach. The sky was turning orange, the waves touching our feet. I told him that I was scared about the future, that I didn't know what to do. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Charlotte," he said softly, "you are stronger than you think. But even strong people need help sometimes." There was silence between us, just the sound of the sea. Then he stepped closer. My heart started to race. I should have moved away, but I didn't. He raised his hand and touched my cheek gently. His touch was warm, his eyes deep and serious. For a second, I forgot who I was, where I was, everything. Then he kissed me. It was not a quick kiss. It was slow, careful, almost painful in its sweetness. I felt my knees weaken, my breath stop. When he pulled back, he whispered, "Forgive me." But I didn't want forgiveness. I wanted more. When I got home that evening, Samuel was sitting on the couch, tired and quiet. He smiled weakly and asked, "How was your day?" I smiled back and said, "It was fine." That was my first lie. The lies begin after that day. I thought I would never see Baltasar again. But he kept calling, not often, just enough to make my heart flutter every time. He would ask simple things: "How are you? Are you sleeping? Have you eaten today?" Samuel never noticed at first. He was too busy with the business, too worried about the loans. Sometimes, I even felt angry at him, angry that he didn't see how lonely I was. Then, one afternoon, Baltasar sent me a message: "Come see me. Just for a few minutes." I promised nothing more. I told Samuel I was visiting my cousin. But instead, I went to Baltasar's office, a beautiful, quiet place with wide windows and books everywhere. He stood up when I entered, smiling softly. "You came," he said. "We talked again, just like before." But this time, when I tried to leave, he took my hand. I felt the electricity of his touch. He said, "You don't have to carry all this alone, Charlotte. Let me help." That night, when I went home, I told Samuel I had met an old school friend who promised to help find a new business opportunity. He looked so hopeful, so grateful. I felt my heart breaking, but I still smiled and said, "Maybe things will get better now." That was my second lie. The lies became easier after that. Small ones at first: where I was going, who I was talking to, why I looked happy some days. Each lie felt like a stone in my chest, but I couldn't stop. Baltasar made me feel alive again. When I was with him, I wasn't the worried wife or the poor woman with debts. I was just Charlotte, a woman who could laugh, who could be desired, who could be seen. It happened 2 weeks later. He called and said, "Meet me tonight. Please. I have something important to tell you." I told Samuel that my cousin was sick and needed me. He believed me, of course he did. He trusted me completely. Baltasar picked me up in his car. We drove to his villa by the sea. The lights were soft, the air smelled of flowers, and music played quietly in the background. He gave me a glass of wine, and we talked, but his eyes kept searching mine. "Charlotte," he said, "you should not have to suffer for someone else's mistakes. Let me fix this for you." I shook my head. "I can't let you do that." He walked closer, his voice low. "You can. And you will. Because I want to see you smile again." I didn't know what to say. My heart was beating so fast I could hear it. Then he reached out and touched my hair, his fingers trembling slightly. "Tell me to stop," he whispered, but I didn't. That night, he kissed me again, deeper, longer, with a tenderness that felt like both love and danger. Everything I had held inside, fear, guilt, pain, melted away in that moment. When I woke up the next morning in his arms, I felt both alive and destroyed. I knew my life had changed forever. When I returned home, Samuel was already awake, making breakfast. He smiled at me, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're a good woman, Charlotte. I don't know what I'd do without you." I smiled back. But my eyes filled with tears. Because I knew he didn't really have me anymore. That was my third lie. And from that day on, my life became a beautiful, terrible secret. The morning after that night, I woke up feeling like a different person. The world looked the same, the sun was shining, the city was noisy, but inside me, everything had changed. Baltasar had left early for work. He had kissed my forehead before leaving, whispering, "Don't worry, Charlotte. I will not let you lose everything." Those words kept echoing in my head as I got dressed and left his villa. When I reached home, Samuel was already at the table, eating quietly. He looked tired and pale, but when he saw me, he smiled. "You stayed late at your cousin's, huh?" he asked. "Yes," I said softly, forcing a smile. She was not feeling well. I wanted to keep her company. That was another lie, one more drop of poison in my heart. 2 days later, Baltasar called me. "I need your bank account number," he said calmly. I froze. "Why?" "To stop the calls from the bank," he replied simply. "Let me help you, Charlotte. Don't argue with me." I tried to protest, but his voice was firm. "It's done," he said finally. The next morning, Samuel came running into the kitchen, holding a letter from the bank. His hands were shaking, but his face was glowing with happiness. "Charlotte," he shouted. "Can you believe this? Someone has made a huge payment on our loan." My heart stopped. I pretended to be surprised. "What? Are you serious?" "Yes. Look, it says here that part of our debt is cleared. Someone must have helped us. Maybe the government program, or maybe that company you were talking about." "Company?" I repeated, confused for a second. Then I realized this was my chance to build the lie. "Yes," I said slowly, trying to sound natural. "Yes, I think it's that company I told you about, the one my cousin mentioned. They help small businesses with financial aid." Samuel looked at me with such joy, such relief, that I had to look away. He took my hands and said, "You're incredible, Charlotte. You've saved us." He hugged me tightly. I hugged him back, but inside, tears burned behind my eyes because it wasn't me who had saved us. It was Baltasar. And the price of that help was my soul. Days passed, then weeks. Every few days, Baltasar would call me. Sometimes, he just wanted to hear my voice. Sometimes, he would ask if Samuel was doing better. But often, he would tell me, "I've sent another payment. You don't need to worry." And every time money arrived, I had to invent a new story for my husband. "Oh, the company said they liked our business plan. They decided to support us for another month. They said they will sponsor us until we recover." Samuel believed every word. He trusted me completely. He started sleeping peacefully again. At home, Samuel was happier than I had seen him in years. He was busy with new contracts, smiling, planning our future. He even started talking about having a child. "Now that everything is better," he said one night, holding my hand, "maybe it's time to build our family." I smiled faintly, pretending to be excited. But deep inside, I felt a cold sadness. How could I bring a child into a life built on lies? Yet I said nothing. I just nodded and whispered, "Yes, maybe." That night, he fell asleep quickly, his arm around me. I lay awake, listening to his breathing, feeling the necklace Baltasar had given me pressing lightly against my skin. I realized then that my life had become two lives. One lived in the light, one hidden in the shadows. In one life, I was Samuel's loyal wife, the woman who saved their home and future. In the other, I was Baltasar's secret lover, the woman who traded her truth for survival. And I didn't know which one was the real me anymore. Time passed. The calls from Baltasar became fewer. He said he was busy, traveling often. But every time he called, my heart still jumped. He never asked for anything more. He never demanded my loyalty. He simply said, "Be happy, Charlotte. That's all I want." But I wasn't happy. I had peace outside, but war inside. Some nights, I would wake up crying quietly, turning away so Samuel wouldn't see. I missed Baltasar's voice, his strength, but I also hated what he reminded me of: my weakness, my betrayal. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking of him. Before everything changed, I thought Baltasar was one of my closest friends. We worked in the same company, and we often stayed late to finish reports or plan meetings. He was kind, funny, and always ready to help. My husband even knew him and trusted him outside of work. We sometimes met for coffee or lunch. Baltasar always had stories about his travels and dreams, and I liked listening to them. He made me laugh when I felt tired or stressed. I never thought he could do something cruel or dishonest. To me, he was more like family than a coworker. But sometimes, I noticed small things, moments that felt strange. He would ask too many questions about my private life, or he would text me late at night about things that weren't really about work. I told myself it was harmless. I didn't want to believe anything bad. How does that feel as a start? Does the tone and level of detail match what you imagined?